I'm Josh Harris, and you're listening to Clear and Loud, a podcast about the ideas, stories, and voices that are shaping our world. Today, I am talking to Tim Schurrer, who is the author of a brand new book that I really hope you get a copy of because it is powerful, it is so important, and it's addressing a topic that a lot of us never take the time to really think carefully about, and that is, what is real success? How do we define success? And yet our definition of success shapes so many parts of our lives. So many of the decisions that we make, the things that we chase, the ladders that we choose to try and climb are shaped by how we define success. And yet so many of us end up climbing a ladder, and whether we reach the top or not, we find out that we don't even want that ladder. We climbed the wrong ladder. Or we spend years of our lives not appreciating what's right in front of us because our definition of success is telling us that we should be accomplishing something different. Tim Schurrer knows what it takes to think through what success is. He's achieved a lot of it. He's experienced his own setbacks and failures. He's built a winning team. He spent almost a decade of his career launching two brands, StoryBrand and Business Made Simple, as the COO alongside New York Times bestselling author Donald Miller. We're huge fans of Donald Miller and StoryBrand. I'm a StoryBrand certified guide. I share his book and his content as often as I can. Well, Tim has been the right-hand man of Don Miller for almost 10 years. And he is now setting out as a writer and speaker. He's the host of Build a Winning Team podcast, where he offers listeners actionable advice as he interviews some of the top leaders in business. He lives in Nashville with his wife, Katie, and their two kids. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with him today. Tim Schurrer, it is so great to have you on the podcast.
It's great to see you. I just love this so much.
Well, I want to start out by asking you about the big idea of your book, The Secret Society of Success. What is it trying to put out into the world?
So I'll start with a little story because I think it'll help us understand what we're trying to really say and communicate. So a lot of people are familiar with this story of Apollo 11. You know, you've got Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, one small step for man,
Right.
One giant leap for mankind. But what a lot of people don't know, there's actually a third astronaut on that mission. His name was Michael Collins. So here you have this guy, Michael Collins.
Incredible.
He Ubers Neil and Buzz to the moon, drops them off so they can do all the various tasks they have to do on the moon's surface while he actually stays back in the command module.
Wow.
He orbits the moon something like 26 times until those guys are ready to be picked up and brought back to Earth. And what would make this a miserable story is if Michael were to get back, sit down with the press and say something like, well, it sure would have been nice to actually walk on the moon. And, acted like a victim, tried to take the spotlight from the mission as a whole. But what's beautiful is that's not at all what happened. He talked about how content he was to have had one of those three seats. He was happy to be part of the mission.
Wow.
So why is it that to be successful, we feel like we have to step into the spotlight, climb the ladder, be the boss, chase fame, money, power? Do we have to walk on the moon to be happy? And I think for so many of us, we are operating with this headspace because this is what culture says success is.
Right.
But it's leaving us just exhausted. And so what I've found is this secret society of people I call the secret society of success that are showing me there are some new ways, some other ways that we can define success that isn't fame, money, and power. So if it's not those things, what is it? And so this book is my journey over the last 15 years trying to answer that question.
I love it. I'd never heard of Michael Collins, which is the point of that incredible illustration. When did you first identify this issue? Like, was there an aha moment in your own life, or as you observe people around you, that we're getting something wrong here? Like, there's something unhealthy about the way that we're defining success.
So you may not know this about me, but there was a time in my life when I wanted to be the next John Mayer.
Oh my gosh.
I was going to be famous. That was my dream. And
you're a musician.
So, yeah.
You play guitar. Do you play guitar?
I've tried to take everything off of the internet that I possibly could. There's still one video of me on YouTube playing at the Bluebird Cafe, because I still think playing at the Bluebird Cafe was a pretty special moment.
No, that's super cool.
But yeah, so I did the singer-songwriter thing. So I wrote some songs, recorded them. I had songs on iTunes, and that was my dream. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that whole experience is I never wanted to be a musician to actually help anybody. I just wanted to be famous.
Well, let's be honest. That is the motivation of most musicians. Okay.
And so I'm on this tour with now a good friend of mine, but at the time I didn't know him that well. His name's Steve Mokler. And Steve had way more plays every day on MySpace. Right.
Okay. Well, you're really dating yourself now. That's right.
So I see this guy who I, knew of from school at, Belmont University, this guy, Steve. Everyone's like, this guy's going to be the next John Mayer, which was impossible because I was going to be the next John Mayer. So, but Steve had all these plays on MySpace. I invited him to go on this tour with me because I figure, okay, if I can't beat him, let's join him.
Oh, that's very strategic.
Try to leech onto him and get some more fans for me. So I'm on this tour. Steve is selling 3 to 4 times as much merchandise as I am every night. People are singing along to his songs. Things are not going well for me.
Are you the headliner for this? Like, that's what I'm trying to. Like, who's headlining this tour?
So we did a tour called The Home is Where the Heart Is tour. We were playing in people's backyards.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
So we had a bed sheet that we had painted. This is our backdrop. It was a bed sheet with a Home is Where the Heart Is tour with Tim Schurrer and Steve Mokler. So it was a co-headline tour.
Okay.
But we know who was really headlining.
Oh man, that's painful.
Mokler.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was. But so I'm on this tour, just caught in a comparison trap.
Yeah. My
success was in direct correlation to how I was feeling about how I was doing compared to him.
Right.
And around that time, I was reading this book called Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. And there's a line in that book that just caught me in my tracks. It said, "Are you demanding or attracting attention?"
Wow.
And I thought, I know exactly what I'm doing. I am demanding attention. I am trying so hard to become known that I just wasn't happy. I wasn't content. And when I thought about what I did well on that tour, it was the logistics, the operations, the running the business side of it.
Yeah.
And I started to think about what would my life look like if I wasn't actually going to be the next John Mayer. And I think any of us step into careers usually with good intentions. We want to make an impact. We want to matter. I don't think many of us are really as selfish as maybe we're operating. I think more of that's happening, subconsciously, but I think it comes from a good place. And yet I was demanding attention and it was not working. I was not experiencing fulfillment in my career and in my life. And so over the last 15 years from that moment, I started to find fulfillment the further I got away from the stage and the more work that I started doing behind the scenes. So when there is this cultural message saying to be successful, step into the spotlight, I'm like, I tried that and it didn't
Right.
work.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was experiencing a very opposite thing. Like it was me stepping into roles behind the scenes that brought that. So I really quickly want to just make an important point, which is the spotlight is not the problem. The problem was my intention for wanting to be in the spotlight. It was all about me. And there's stories in this book, and so many of the stories that I'm inspired by are people who have actually lived, in alignment with the way of the secret society, even when you're in a place of influence and power. So it's more about, the secret society is more about the posture in which you show up.
Right.
More so than it is about your place on the org chart. Because if there is a common denominator for people in the secret society, it's helping others win.
That's good.
And we can do that in the spotlight or in supporting roles. But the problem is when we want to make it all about us, when we're demanding attention and recognition, that's when things go south.
Well, I'm also just struck by the fact that we can have an idea of what we think will make us happy that's actually killing us and not making us happy. You know what I mean? Like if you actually aren't wired or enjoy all the aspects of being in the spotlight, it's not even going to be fun if you if you get there. I think that's the wild thing about the way our definition of success can direct and misdirect and even cause us to pass up or miss out on the work and the kind of activity that's actually deeply satisfying. And I'd love that about your book helps us to see that. Yeah. So I appreciate the fact that you're saying that the spotlight is not necessarily the problem, but do you think it's uniquely problematic in the world that we live in today? Like in comparison to, 20 years ago or whatever time period?
If you ask kids what they want to be when they grow up, they say YouTube stars. Kids these days want to be famous. Mm-hmm. And I think that has just evolved into more and more of a problem. I think so many people want to be famous or whatnot. That's been a part of our story, especially in America, right?
Sure.
That's been a part of the American story for so long. But I think it's totally different level with the rise of social media, YouTube, all these things. And so it's getting worse. I think it's getting worse. And yet the stories that are inspiring to me aren't that. And, one thing that I've really appreciated that has changed my mindset about what success is the story about LeBron James. So in 2020, LeBron and the Lakers win the NBA Finals. And you'd think a guy like LeBron would want to be the scoring leader in the NBA. I mean, he's one of the greatest basketball players
of all time. He can definitely score. Yeah.
He
knows how to skip to the basket.
If he want to.
Yeah.
But in 2020, LeBron led the league in assists. Meaning the way that he chose to play, how he showed up, and ultimately how he and his team won was by him setting other people up to score.
Right.
So what if success is in the assist? What if success isn't us obsessing so much about our own climb, our own path, but what if we spent a little bit more of our time trying to help somebody else win? And when I was at StoryBrand, I hired every single employee. And, there's a day that an application came in and on this person's resume, they had one of my favorite companies listed. And I was so excited to talk to them. I'm like, what is it like? So in the first interview, I'm asking them these questions and they said, here's the thing. It's a really competitive environment, but nobody there has your back.
Oh.
And I'm like, what do you mean nobody there has your back? And the company culture, these people were so interested in their own journey, climb up the ladder. They would never do anything like give somebody credit, recognize somebody, contribute to someone else's project unless it had something to do with serving their own agenda. And this is so prevalent in the cultures that we all live and work in, We want to be famous. And maybe for us, that looks like we want to be the boss in the corner office.
Right.
We want people to know us, right? We want to appear successful online to our friends. So it is more prevalent, I think, than it ever has been. And we have to learn to identify that spotlight mindset in our lives so that we can choose another path.
Yeah.
And that other path is helping somebody else win, being all about the assist and starting to find success that way, then just kind of subconsciously responding more in line with kind of what culture is telling us success is.
You think about the spotlight metaphor, and if you had a band up on stage and everyone in the band was fighting to get in the spotlight, you can imagine how the music would suffer, right? I mean, and I think that's kind of the thing. It's like if you have a team where everybody is fighting to get the credit, fighting to be the one in the spotlight, the actual work they're doing ultimately is suffering.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you led your team to have that different mindset where, of course, everybody cares about being recognized themselves. Everybody wants to advance their own career. Those things are a given. But as a leader, how did you create a different type of culture where the assist was actually celebrated and valued?
You're so right that if all of us are demanding to be the guy in the center of the stage, like that's where the problems start. And if you think about a concert, we can't all be the person in the center of the stage. And honestly, not everybody wants to be the person standing in the center of the stage. There's a person out there that loves running sound. There's a person out there that loves taking the ticket and being the smiling face and letting you go enjoy your night. The problem is when we are culturally, we are pressured to believe that we are only successful if we are that person in the center of the stage.
Yeah.
So this book, I hope, among many things, is it's validation for playing the role that you play on the team. And don't get me wrong, we need the person in the spotlight for the whole thing to work.
Right.
But we also need everyone else to feel valued for the role that they play, for the contribution that they make. We need Michael Collins to be content, in one of those seats.
Right.
If he tries to be Michael or Neil, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
Why it's successful is that everyone knows the value that they bring on the team and they do their role with excellence. And so that is so much in how I wanted our team to operate.
Right.
Hey guys, here's this vision that Don so brilliantly has laid out in front of us. This is where we want to go as a company. And now to get there, it is going to take all of us playing our part for that to come true.
Right.
We need our director of marketing to be insanely talented at the marketing part. We need our content and media teams to create incredible content to help people, so we need everyone doing their thing. And I think there's just not enough recognition being given to people for playing the roles that they play. And the reality is, and we all know this, none of this ever happens solo. Like we are at our best when we come together as a team doing, our thing, everyone playing their part.
Well, it's just funny because when you mentioned YouTube, or now let's say TikTok stars, whatever it might be, even in that world, these kids that become the massive stars usually have some kind of supporting team behind them, right?
Absolutely,
I mean, their parents are running things, they've got their momager in the background, they've got all these different people, friends, whatever, running merch and doing all these aspects of it. So there's really no real lasting, powerful, big success that can be achieved with just the person in the spotlight. And I love that, what you described is that leadership and building a team has to do with reminding everybody that we can't do this unless we're all playing our part. I'm curious how the hiring process played a role in that, because, if you're trying to put a band together and you're just, you're like, oh, this person's an amazing vocalist, let's this is the lead singer. Oh, let's hire another lead singer. It's like, you're not going to have a good band if you hire 5 lead singers, right?
Oh yeah.
And so how did that play in to your process of even like looking past certain like impressive qualities in some people and going, no, I don't need that person, even though they're a rock star. I actually need this person who is going to be quiet and maybe not that impressive, but will play that supporting role. How did you think through that in hiring?
Yeah. So it was so prevalent in the way that I thought and approached this, because there are so many people that I came across that looked incredibly talented.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have nothing to do with them. maybe they're great on a team, but not on this one. Because somebody that I wanted, a trait that I wanted on our team is somebody who's willing to do the work, to be a part of the team, but they didn't have to make it all about them. And there's a lot of people that we've probably both met that want to make it all about them. And
sure,
do your thing.
Right.
Not on this team, though. This is not going to work. And so that is something I was thinking of. Where do they fit? Because everyone needs to play their role. And if we already have one of those roles covered, then, or if somebody's joining on and ultimately they just want to be Don.
Right.
I'm like, I got him already.
I've already got a Don Miller.
So,
yeah.
I mean, you may be able to go and rise up as a personality in some brand, but we kind of just knew the avenue that was going to work best for us. And we're really strategic about having all of the roles covered. That's sure.
Really good.
And people to show up with the right headspace.
If you enjoy this podcast, show some love to our sponsor, Beanfields. Beanfields are crunchy, mouth-watering chips with full-on flavor. And you can enjoy bag after bag because they're healthy. These plant-based chips are vegan, non-GMO, gluten-free, corn-free, and come in incredible flavors like sour cream, nacho, fiery hot, Korean barbecue, and ranch. They are positively addicting. Visit beanfields.com to order directly, or just go to your local Whole Foods or natural food store. I want to get back to your book. I'm looking at page 10, and you give this kind of summary introduction that you then unpack in the rest of the book. But I want to give a little teaser here for people so that they'll be motivated to go out and get your book. But this list is what being a member of the secret society of success looks like. You're kind of listing off the key qualities. And I'm wondering if we can do a little rapid fire round here where I read off each of these and you just give your kind of immediate 1 or 2 sentence explanations of what it's about. Okay. So this is what it looks like to be a member of the secret society of success. Number 1, you define success for yourself and live into that fully.
Yeah. Are you going to do the work of answering this question? Success is, like, how would you fill in the blank?
Oh, interesting.
Because either we choose it ourselves or we live almost in reaction to the cultural pressures and definitions, how society is trying to define it for us. So the people I've been inspired by have done the work to define what that really means. And most people wouldn't actually, if they're honest, fill in fame, money, power, but our lives don't look that way.
What's the functional definition? Yeah.
Let's get really clear about what that really means.
Number 2, you find a deep sense of fulfillment in your work, but that sense of fulfillment does not depend heavily on recognition or external validation.
So much of our motivation can come from wanting to just be recognized, to get the high five, the pat on the back. And so I have learned to define success by the process, not the result. Like falling in love with the work itself. Like, are you content having done the work, even if you don't get the recognition for doing that work? Like, are you content doing the work?
Yeah.
And really, I think that brings clarity in how we actually define what success really is.
Well, I mean, that's what we spend so much of our lives doing is the actual work, right? So if you're not going to find joy in that, and it's just like, well, if it doesn't blow up, if it doesn't become this massive thing where everybody sees me, then my life was a waste. That's really sad.
And Steve Jobs said, when I was working at Apple, I heard him say, the joy is in the journey.
Mm.
And what he didn't say was, the joy is selling 55 million iPhones.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's about the process. It's about the journey. Are you going to find contentment in the journey, or is success only said result?
Right.
Because I feel like there is always another tier.
Yeah.
And it can be a trap. So are you willing to be content on the journey or not?
All right. Number 3, very short and sweet. You help others win.
I think that's it. That's the common denominator. If there is one thing, people in the secret society, we help others win. That's the motivation.
Number 4, you are among the hardest working people in business, full of ambition.
This is me just trying to defend myself, because I think so many people would hear what I am saying in this book and say, okay, cool. So just be super content and don't have any ambition. Like, goals are bad.
Yeah.
Trying to, be the boss is bad. It's like, no. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, one of my favorite stories in the book is of Tim Cook. He's running one of the largest companies in the world. He is full of ambition. And yet the way that he shows up is more postured in the way of the secret society. And so being content does not mean that we have to be void of ambition. I actually think it's both. It's contentment doing the work, contentment in the seat that we sit in, and yet striving for excellence, chasing after big goals and big ambitions. But it's more how our heart and our head is showing up that really defines success and somebody in the secret society.
Number 5.
Not lazy.
No, that's good. No, I think that's really important, because you could see people using this as an excuse to avoid disappointment by not wanting anything, by not aiming for anything.
It's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Yeah. But
number 5
out there.
Number 5, you make the people around you and the projects you contribute to better.
Yeah, I think that's all about the assist. Are you willing to show up and serve somebody else's agenda, help and contribute to a project, be a team member? Or are you going to kind of make it only about yourself? And the people that I've been most inspired by, it's just whenever I'm with them, whatever conversations I have with them, they just seem to make things better. I'm
actually going to skip number 6 because I want to come back to it with a specific personal question for you. So I'm skipping number 6, going to number 7. You are servant-minded and purpose-driven.
Yeah. Here, a quick little story here. But so I was at this event, heard Andy Stanley speak, and he said, to find our purpose, we don't need to ask questions like, why am I here? What's in it for me? He said, the question we need to ask is this: who am I here for? And what I love, that question, it allows us to bring our skills, our passions, our abilities, but you do it and show up in a way that is to help somebody else.
Yeah.
And so he says, that's how you find your purpose. And there is a servant-mindedness that I think that brings. How can I help somebody else? And I think if we do that, if we help somebody else win, I mean, I feel like I've said that phrase like 45 times already, so I apologize, but that's it. It's like, it's
so
such
good.
A message that's like, it's not all about us all the time.
Right.
And so I think that's a marker of people in the secret society.
And number 8, you are more interested in what you can do for others than what they can do for you.
Yeah, that's a who am I here for? And let me show up and help somebody else, whether or not you ever get the thing back in return,
I hope that hearing that little summary of some of the things that you address will get people excited to pick up this book. I mean, I was texting my son as I was reading it today in Starbucks, and I was like, I want you to read this book. you know, and I can think of many other people. I mean, I think anyone would benefit from reading this book, but I want to come back to number 6 because I skipped it. And I wanted to dig into this a little bit and ask how it relates to you personally, because I think this is really fascinating. Number 6 on the list is you can thrive in the spotlight, but also don't mind being behind the scenes. And you've already touched on this, talking about the fact that you're not anti-spotlight. You're not saying, people who are the upfront person, they're really bad. And, really it's just the people behind the scenes that matter. You're saying that you can be both.
Yeah.
My question for you is, how did you decide to make a really massive life transition, career transition from being in a supporting role in a very successful business, StoryBrand, Business Made Simple, supporting Don, playing that role in the background, to saying, you know what? I think it's time for me to write a book, launch my own podcast, be a keynote speaker. What was the process of making that big of a change?
About 5 years ago, I'm at this event that Bob Goff hosted called Dream Big. And at the end of this 2-day workshop, they go around and ask everybody, what's your big dream? And I said out loud for the very first time, I want to write a book.
Wow.
And having worked with Don, I've been able to experience the impact that his writing has had in my life, and also seen how, as an author, he's shaped so many people's, mindsets, how he's impacted how they think about things. And it's so fun. I just loved what he was able to do. But even then, I didn't really ever think I would write a book to leave. I just wanted to write a book because I thought it would be a fun goal.
Right.
And so I start taking steps in that direction. I hire a team of people to help me write the book. And I had a literary agent, and I got a book deal and started doing it. And we're about 6 months in advance of the book coming out. And I'm talking with Don about all that I need to do to launch this book well. I mean, I need to have my own podcast. I need to be on a crazy number of podcasts. I want to do keynotes. And the closer we got to the launch, the more I realized to do the launch well and to support the book well, I wasn't also going to be able to do my job well.
Wow.
Running the business with him, it's a lot that I had as a responsibility. And so felt like I was up against kind of an impossible decision because I wasn't going to let anything suffer. I believed in the message of the book. I wanted to give it 100%, but I also believed in this company and loved what I was doing, and I wanted to give that 100%. I just couldn't do both. And so, I was up against this impossible decision to walk away from a dream job to chase another dream. And I knew what I needed to do. And part of it is because in writing the book, I just believe that there are so many people that are up against what I have been up against, wrestling through this definition of success, feeling pressured to do a thing when maybe we just redefine success and it just changes everything for us. And I just think that people are tired and exhausted on this journey to chase and strive after this definition of success that's not giving them what they want, which is meaning and fulfillment in their lives and their careers. And so I just felt like I had to do it. And if I didn't, I would have regretted it. I was afraid of regretting not chasing it and giving it everything that I could. And so I told Dawn, and I said, hey, I got to chase this thing. And he sticks his hand out to shake my hand, and he said, congratulations.
Wow.
And when we told our staff, because we had set out a 90-day plan because I wanted to set the team up for success, and we let the team know about the transition. And, he said, Tim's helped make my dream come true. I want us to do everything we can to make his dream come true.
That's great.
And Josh, this is crazy. So I leave and Don pays me for 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
I get my full salary for 6 months because he wants to help me launch well. He writes the foreword of my book. I launched this podcast called Build a Winning Team. Just recently, he was a guest on my podcast. We had the book release party at his house.
Oh, that's incredible.
So it's just been so cool how a lot of people who'd had a relationship like he and I had, it'd been so easy for him to resent me, to give me a really hard time, but he did the exact opposite. He helped me launch well.
That's so incredible.
And so I just feel so compelled to talk about all the things that I'm talking about because it just feels so important. And looking back at almost a decade with Don, I mean, I was 4 months short of 10 years. There was a part of me, I'm like, let's just get all the way there. Yeah. But timing, it just didn't make sense with, when the book was coming out. But it's been a remarkable journey, and I'm on it. I'm in the middle of it. I'm at the time you and I were talking, my book came out 10 days ago, but I just feel so happy, and I missed that team because I loved what we built, and yet I'm so content and excited about launching into this new journey.
What are some of the biggest lessons that you learned from what you got to help build? And I'll just share a few of these because I think they're really exciting, and obviously it speaks to Don's vision and your leadership and the whole team. I mean, a lot of people behind this amazing success, but you grew the business from 250,000 to 16.5 million in annual revenue, generated more than 20 million podcast downloads, launched multiple best-selling books and on-demand video courses, produced dozens of events from a 2,400 person event to a 5,500 person live stream, and built this culture where your team is focused on helping other people win. That's amazing. That's an incredible thing to have on your resume. And again, my own business has been affected by what you built through StoryBrand, being a StoryBrand guide. So thank you for that. But what are some of the lessons that you learned in that process through moments of success and maybe even moments of challenge?
So in 2015, Don released his book, Scary Close. And about 10 days after a book comes out is when you find out if it's made bestseller lists.
Right.
And Don gets off the phone. He's at the office. He gets off the phone with the publisher, and this was the call that we'd know. So he hangs up with the publisher, lifts his hands in the air, and said, "We hit number 5 on the New York Times," which was the highest that any of his books had ever been. And we hugged and high-fived, and we were all excited. And then something really beautiful happened. We all went back to work. And I think some people would hear that story and say, y'all are dysfunctional. You don't know how to celebrate. But what I love and what I've learned is we had a team of people that were content doing the work.
Wow.
We were willing to show up that afternoon, that next morning, exactly the same, whether or not we hit the list that we had, wanted to hit.
Right.
We were content doing the work. The validation is nice and it's fine, but it wasn't our motivation for showing up. So first thing I'd say is falling in love with the work itself is one of the big things that I learned. But there's a whole phrase in StoryBrand that we talk about, being the guide. Your customer is the hero. You are the guide. So many businesses try to be the hero, but things start to click when they become the guide and their customer is the hero. They are Yoda, the customer is Luke Skywalker. So, well, what is that? It's helping others win.
Yeah, that's so good.
And so I operated in this culture and an environment where we were just looking to add value and help other people, bringing our best.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing. If we made it more about others being the guide, I think that was a huge thing. And another is Don, one of the big influences in his life was when he read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm.
And one of the key lessons in that book, it talks about to find meaning, one of the three things is to find a redemptive perspective on your suffering.
Mm.
So what that looked like was whenever we were up against some kind of challenge, it wasn't the thing that just continued to knock us down. We're like, what does this make possible?
Wow.
And so Scott Hamilton talks about failure as, what if we started to look at failure as 100% information? It's
That's
just
such a great line. I love that. Yeah.
And so that's something that, Don, just time and time again, his subconscious default response is just finding redemption, the lesson in the failure or in the learning. So it's very hard for me to even list what the failures were because we were just so quick to jump into what did we learn? Let's keep moving. And, Don talks a lot about a lot of the successful people that he has known. He said they don't stay down after they get tackled. They just kind of get right back up. They keep their legs moving.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to talk about the fact that you are doing your own podcast. And I think my question for you is, it started out with, I want to write a book. And then as you're launching the book, you're realizing this is a full-time focus. And so you're having your own podcast, you're out there speaking. What do you want to build with the work you're doing? What's your longer term vision?
Yeah. So the clarity I've found in this next season and what I'm really excited about, I help people build winning teams. And everything that I do, whether it's podcast episodes or it's books that I will write in the future, I just want it to be around helping people build winning teams. And so that's the broad, the large vision. And then how I do that right now is through this book that I just released, this podcast, me being on stages, doing keynotes. And so that's it.
That's great.
I'm trying to just keep very focused on those things and also just enjoy, what this new life kind of as a solopreneur looks like.
Right.
And let me just, one of my daily affirmations has been, I do less work with more focus so I can show up as a better dad and husband. So I'm trying to not believe and buy into this, go, faster, more, which is so easy to do when you're launching a business. And I'm trying to actually focus on fewer things. So rather than me going and trying to be a coach to 15 or whatever more clients, like that sounds like a lot. That sounds like a nightmare. Let me do less work and not less work, but more focused work.
Yeah. And not believing that quantity is necessarily going to be more effective.
That's it.
Well, that's a big, it's interesting. It's a big change to go from leading a staff of, how many people were you leading?
It's like 30 people.
Oh, wow. You've got assistants, you got people who, you can assign things, you got, content creation teams. Now you are all those teams.
Yeah. We were just talking earlier about, I'm doing my own video edits for little clips that I put on social media. I'm editing my own podcast.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm just thinking about a lot of small business owners, and I consider myself one of them. They can look at a team like StoryBrand that's, hitting amazing revenue numbers and creating all this amazing content and kind of feel this dissatisfaction. And I love the fact that you were part of that. You helped build that. And then you opted to kind of start at, not zero, but you kind of went back to a much smaller model where it's you and it's, you're building this yourself. I love the fact that you're like not pining for the other thing. You're just saying, no, there's a beauty in what I'm doing. Like there's a beauty in this. There's there's a slowness and there's a smallness that actually has its own reward.
There's a story I tell in chapter 11. I read this book by Lee Lefevre called Big Enough.
Oh, cool.
And it's his journey and exploration in starting his business and just asking, I mean, not in this language exactly, but like, what is success?
Right.
Do we want to build this team? Now we're getting all this attention and traction in the business. Do we scale this thing?
Yeah.
And, spoiler alert, they didn't. They decided to stay small.
Like purposely limited their growth because they wanted to be in a certain place. Interesting.
So much so that they created something called the Common Craft Explainer Network. And so many people were coming to them for the work that their company, Common Craft, was offering as a service. And they, as a part of this network, they listed their competitors on their website.
Oh my gosh.
So they had 9 competitors paying $750 a month. I think that comes out to like $81,000 a year that they made by choosing to stay small, not scaling, but instead funnel leads to their competitors.
Incredible.
But it just really came down to what is success for them?
Right.
And we all get to choose. And I think that's a really important lesson is success is something that we define for ourselves.
Right.
Fill in the blank. Success is... Right. If I am trying to live according to your definition of success, I am going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a person that wants to build a massive team because they have huge goals and aspirations to impact a crazy amount of people. Go do that.
Right.
For me right now, that's not what success looks like.
Yeah.
And maybe there's going to be a season in my life where it is. And I just recorded this podcast interview with Juliet Funt, and I love her take on this. She says, scale is not bad if you choose it.
Wow. That is really good.
So what is success? What do we want to choose and pursue in our lives and our careers? Like, let's get clear on what our definition of success is.
I want to wrap up our conversation with a story that you share in the book that really, really impacted me. Almost brought me to tears as I read it in the Starbucks. But it's a chapter where you're talking about the importance of recognition and, as a leader or as a team member, recognizing other people and their contribution. And you tell this story of a friend who had the opposite, experience. He didn't experience that good recognition. He'd been 10 years at an organization. He shows up on his 10-year anniversary at work. He's hoping that someone will just make note of this, just remember, just, honor him and thank him and do something. And the whole day goes by and nobody even noticed. Nobody says anything. And then you share the story of how on your 5-year anniversary at StoryBrand, Don Miller walks into your office and he gives you this present, which is a nice watch with a handwritten note that he's written. And you put the note in your book. And I'm wondering if you would read that note, because I think it's such a powerful example of what your book embodies. So if you don't mind, I'd love for you to read that letter.
So it says this: what you have accomplished in the last 5 years has been stunning. You have built a company, but more than a company, you have built a community. At StoryBrand, people love each other because of the tone you have set and the person that you are. It's a very hard thing to build a company. Only a small percentage of those who try succeed. But you didn't just make it. You built a company that thrives. It is growing and we are all growing with it. You make things better when you walk in the room. We are who we are. a loving, competent community because of you. I got you a gift to always remind you of this milestone, but it's not really for you. It's for your son. If in the distant future he ever has a challenge, you can give it to him and remind him that it is in him to do a hard thing well. Love, Don.
Oh, man.
I can't tell you how many times I've thought about the moment that I'm going to give Judson that watch, and he's 4.5, because that's it. I mean, I think for us, as we think about what success is, it's showing up for other people. It's speaking truth to someone else. And there's going to be a moment that Judson's going to be up against a challenge, and I'm going to be able to give him a watch and just say, hey, buddy, you got this. I've got your back. Success is in the assist. It's in loving other people well, not minding if we ever get the credit. And, if there's a North Star for me in this whole journey and what will continue to be a motivation for me in this next season, it's this quote by Albert Schweitzer. He says, I don't know what your destiny will be. Some of you will perhaps occupy remarkable positions. Perhaps some of you will become famous by your pens or as artists. But I know one thing: the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. And I think that's it. That's it.
Thanks for listening to the Clear and Loud podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Our producer is Pam Cameron, and this episode contains music by Jeremy Yaddo at Music for Podcasts. If you like what you hear, give us a boost by subscribing or leaving a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen. We'd also love your feedback on today's episode. Or if you have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode or a guest you'd like us to consider, email us at hello@clearandloud.com. You can also shoot us a direct message on Instagram. Our handle is @clearandloud. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.